In an airport in Istanbul, people are weirded out when they see Logar walk by while looking like a bad sci-fi villain. He meets with his strange-looking assistant and they start planning their next evil plot. Meanwhile in town, carpet seller Arif is settling down with his wife Siku, who used to be an alien princess. She's already pregnant and Arif imagines their kid will look just like him someday. Siku wants the kid to visit her home planet when he's born, but Arif has sold off her spaceship for quick money and now he'll have to buy it back. Unfortunately, the scrap dealer is gone, but Arif finds a medicine dealer and buys some naughty blue medicine instead. At that moment, Arif sees suspicious people entering his store, so he rushes back to discover his arch-nemesis Logar is back. Ready to fight, Arif activates his ability and floats in the air, only to be interrupted by a neighbor. After Arif kicks the man out, he's shocked to hear Logar has come to apologize for all his evil deeds, and Arif forgives him because Logar's offering his own spaceship. After having lunch with Siku, Logar takes Arif to an old factory outside the city, only to knock him out with a very bright light. When Arif wakes up, he finds himself captured inside a machine and discovers there's no spaceship. This was Logar's plan all along to steal Siku from him. Then Logar proceeds to wear Arif's clothes, cut his hair, put on a fake mustache, and use a device to change his voice, that way Siku won't know he isn't the real Arif. Then Logar activates the weird machine, which starts spinning and sends Arif 1 million years back in time. At first Arif isn't too bothered about being in the Cretaceous period and tries calling his wife, but the signal is bad and connects him to a shop instead. Arif begins walking around to find a better signal but freezes when he suddenly finds a bunch of dinosaurs and finally realizes the seriousness of the situation. As he wanders around without knowing what to do, Arif finds 3 apes and decides to educate them, hoping they'll evolve and eventually build something that will send him back to the present. Days begin to pass and Arif tries his best to be a good teacher, but it isn't very effective. Eventually winter comes and Arif's pee instantly freezes every time, so he makes a decoration with the resulting ice. By the time spring comes, he's grown a big beard, but he makes a razor with some sticks to cut it off. Unfortunately, the apes still don't show any signs of progress, so Arif leaves them behind to find a real civilization. As soon as he leaves, a black monolith falls from the sky and lands near the apes as a nod to Space Odyssey. Meanwhile, Arif crosses the forest in search of water while ignoring any creatures he comes across. However, he soon bumps into a T-Rex who roars at him. Arif tries to improvise a slingshot but stops himself when he realizes the dinosaur is just a mother protecting her eggs. Thinking about his own future kid, Arif accepts to back away, and the T-Rex thanks him by dropping a huge honeycomb for him. Arif happily eats the honey until he discovers that the bees here are huge. A bee immediately stings him and begins chasing him, so he hides behind a tree. When he looks up, he sees some cavemen who shoot a tranquilizer at him to knock him out. Sometime later, Arif wakes up in a cave surrounded by many cavemen in the middle of a ritual. The leader Dimi and his daughter Mimi think Arif may be a spy sent by a tribe known as the Erogians and want him gone, so Arif tries to explain he comes from the future. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of a group of Erogians led by Crow, who have been oppressing Dimi's tribe for years. Every time they visit, they take the villagers' food and tools, and Crow torments them as he reminds them it's forbidden to draw, make fire, or invent things. This time Crow also chooses 3 men for a special ritual, and one of them is Arif, who refuses to go. As he struggles, the Erogians knock him out with another tranquilizer. Moments later, the Erogians are dragging the new prisoners back to their village when Stony accidentally hits his head on a rock and falls from his horse, which causes him to break his arm. Crow assumes Stony won't recover and is ready to bury him, but Arif immediately cuts in and teaches them how to make a makeshift cast for the broken arm. Stony is very grateful, but Arif is still sent back to walk with the prisoners. When they make it to the village, Stony meets with his father Kaya, the leader of the Erogians and Crow's nephew. Kaya is angry because he found a handmade mask in Stony's room and scolds him for having interests like drawing and dancing when he should be training to be a warrior. After sending Stony to torture slaves, Kaya and Crow discuss the construction of a tower that will touch the sky. A picture on the cave shows a spaceship visiting the cavemen, and the men remember the day it happened. Some years ago, a strange metal contraption fell from the sky and two mysterious men came out of it. They gave Sandy a ball as a gift, and because of the famine, the only thing Sandy could gift them in return was manure. Disgusted, the strangers immediately went back to their metal can and left, but when Sandy ran toward them, the spaceship's engine burnt him to death. Disgusted, the strangers immediately went back to their metal can and left, but when Sandy ran toward them, the spaceship's engine burnt him to death. Disgusted, the strangers immediately went back to their metal can and left, but when Sandy ran toward them, the spaceship's engine burnt him to death. Disgusted, the strangers immediately went back to their metal can and left, but when Sandy ran toward them, the spaceship's engine burnt him to death. Disgusted, the strangers immediately went back to their metal can and left, but when Sandy ran toward them, the spaceship's engine burnt him to death. Disgusted, the strangers immediately went back to their metal can and left, but when Sandy ran toward them, the spaceship's engine burnt him to death. Disgusted, the strangers immediately went back to their metal can and left, but when Sandy ran toward them, the spaceship's engine burnt him to death. Disgusted, the strangers immediately went back to their metal can and left, but when Sandy ran toward them, the spaceship's engine burnt him to death. Disgusted, the strangers immediately went back to their metal can and left, but when Sandy ran toward them, the spaceship's engine burnt him to death. Disgusted, the strangers immediately went back to their metal can and left, but when Sandy ran toward them, the spaceship's engine burnt him to death. Since then, Kaya has been against technology and new inventions. He also believes that his father is in heaven, and that's why they're building the tower. Moments later, it's announced that the three men they brought from the village must climb the tower to find Sandy. Nobody has survived this test yet, but whoever does will be considered a hero. To everyone's surprise, Arif volunteers to go first, saying it's easy. He slowly climbs the tower, almost falling a few times but always recovering quickly, and eventually he reaches the top. There's a strange man there saying that life is meaningless, and when Arif gets closer, the guy falls off. He manages to hold onto the edge and Arif offers him a cigarette to help him relax, but when the guy tries to grab it, he falls for good this time. Afterward, Arif descends the tower and shocks everyone by returning alive. When they ask about Sandy, the body finally hits the ground, but it's just a random worker. Kaya is upset and orders everyone to make the tower higher while Crow tells Arif he's allowed to eat and drink all he wants now. Then Stony asks if he can paint Arif's picture on a stone because he's impressed by his heroism, and Arif gets to see Stony's secret collection. He tells him to sign his work so historians will finally know who made them. He also learns that Stony is in love with Mimi and even got a tattoo of her, but their love is forbidden because she's from another tribe. To make Stony feel better, Arif plays a romantic song on his phone, but this only reminds him of his own wife. Arif begs Stony to help get all the tools and gadgets that Kaya has confiscated, and in return, he'll help him get together with Mimi. In the evening, while everyone is having a feast, Stony and Arif sneak into a secret cave where Kaya hides all the tools. There are all sorts of things there like a VHS player, but unfortunately their search is interrupted by Crow, who immediately takes them to see Kaya. Arif says they just were there to add his phone to the collection and the excuse saves them from punishment, but then Kaya announces it's time for Stony to start a family. Kaya's already found a woman for his son, but Stony is disgusted by her and refuses to marry her, so he decides to abandon the village. Furious, Kaya also kicks Arif out for defending his son. Arif and Stony travel together for a while until they find Mimi and her friends bathing in a river. With some tips from Arif on how to talk to women, Stony approaches Mimi and gives her flowers, but she hits him because he's the enemy. Arif cuts in and shows Mimi the tattoo, but since Mimi still isn't impressed, Arif offers to carry all the women's furs instead. As they make their way to the village, Mimi and Stony get to talk and Stony impresses everyone by playing the flute. When they arrive at the village, Stony shows his loyalty to Dini and Arif, convinces them to let them stay by saying he'll build a new civilization together with no prohibitions. Then Arif offers a speech that also gets him the support from the whole village. Since Arif says they don't have to hide art, Mimi and Stony take the kids to paint on the walls and bond in the process, while Arif teaches the men how to use the razor. In the evening, Arif and Stony go back to the cave. Their tree costumes are noticed by the young guard, but Arif distracts him by giving him a chore, and now they can enter the cave to steal everything. The next morning, they come back to the village with a cartwheel full of gadgets. For the following weeks, Arif teaches the villagers all kinds of inventions and how to be properly civilized. There's a machine to make flour, lessons on cooking and making traps, building an oven and a water canal, a school for children, pottery, and even instruments and decorations. As days pass, Mimi and Stony also keep growing closer. Eventually, the village becomes a beautiful place and they officially found it with a water fountain. However, Arif gets frustrated because it's still not advancing fast enough to build a time machine, so a villager calms him down by sharing some newly invented alcohol. One night during a party, Arif shares some mints with the others, but when he grabs one for himself, he accidentally takes naughty blue medicine instead. Arif tries to keep himself distracted to avoid cheating on Siku, but even funny vegetables remind him of what he's missing. Desperate for